It started like nothing more than a hobby. A group of high school friends with too much free time and not enough sense had gotten into urban exploring. At first it was harmless. Old construction sites, half-collapsed barns, the occasional trip into a long-abandoned mall. They loved the thrill of walking where no one else dared, chasing that rush of danger, without ever really believing they were in danger. But there's a big difference between a crumbling building in the city and what they found in the desert. The one who pushed them into it was Charles. He wasn't the kind of guy people expected to lead an adventure. Skinny, quiet, more interested in photography than football. But Charles had this way of finding places. Online in forums, on obscure social media accounts. He always seemed to know where something strange was hiding. One night, he pulled out his phone and showed them an Instagram page he claimed he'd stumbled across. No name, no captions, just a handful of grainy photos, rusted rails disappearing into blackness, splintered wooden beams, graffiti scrawled across stone walls. Each picture tagged with a set of GPS coordinates. Most of the group laughed it off. It looked sketchy, maybe fake, but Charles insisted. He said these were real abandoned mine shafts out in the desert, untouched for decades. And if they wanted an adventure, this was it. So the next weekend, four of them piled into a beat-up sedan and drove hours into nowhere. The road stretched endlessly, the kind of silence that makes you forget the world even exists. They joked at first, blasting music, tossing snacks at each other. But the farther they went, the quieter the car became. Mile after mile of rock, sand, and dead brush. No towns, no people, just emptiness. When they finally reached the coordinates, there was nothing. No shaft, no ruins, just a desert stretching on forever. The driver swore Charles had dragged them out here for nothing. They were about to turn back when Charles shouted from the edge of a small ridge. And there it was, a collapsed wooden frame, half buried in the sand. What looked like the mouth of something much deeper. The air grew heavy. Even standing outside, it felt wrong, like the earth itself was holding its breath. They argued for a while whether it was safe, whether it was even worth it. The driver wanted to leave. Another guy was already pulling out his phone, planning to take photos just to prove they'd found it. But Charles? He was already tying a rope to a boulder, flashlight in hand. And against their better judgment, they followed him down. The shaft swallowed them whole. Inside, the light from the desert sun faded almost immediately. Their flashlights carved shaky beams across splintered beams and rusted rails. The walls dripped with condensation, the air thick with dust. Every footstep echoed too loudly, like the mine was listening. They laughed nervously, trying to shake the tension. One of them shouted just to hear the echo bounce back, but the sound didn't bounce. It sank, like the earth had swallowed it. Deeper and deeper they went, and that's when they heard it, a faint scraping, metal against stone. Everyone froze. They swung their flashlights, but the tunnel stretched endlessly. The sound came again, louder this time, a dragging, screeching noise from somewhere ahead. Probably just rocks shifting, someone whispered. But then came the crash. A rusted tin can drop from the ceiling, clattering across the rails. The sound echoed, sharper than it should have been. And then, the scream. It wasn't human. High-pitched, metallic, a screech that rattled their bones. It came from deep inside the tunnel, rushing toward them like a wave. Panic exploded. Flashlights swung wildly as they bolted for the rope. The tunnel seemed to stretch, every second an eternity, though it groaned above them, as if the mine itself was trying to collapse. One of them tripped, His shoe slipped off, lost in the dark, but there was no time to grab it. The scream grew louder, closer, echoing off every surface. They hauled themselves up the rope with scraped hands, hearts pounding, lungs burning. When they burst into daylight, they didn't stop running. Not until the car was in sight, the desert sun blinding their eyes. Only then did they realize they were shaking, bleeding, covered in dust. No one spoke on the ride home. No one wanted to admit what they'd heard. But Charles couldn't let it go. A few days later, he returned alone. He said he just wanted to grab the shoe they left behind. When he came back, he was pale, trembling. He dropped the shoe on the ground in front of them without saying a word. The fabric was shredded, torn apart in long, jagged rips, and across the rubber sole, deep indentations, like bite marks. Not human, not animal, something else. To this day, none of them will talk about what they heard in that mine. But Charles still has the shoe locked in a box under his bed, as proof that what chased him out of the desert that day wasn't just in their heads.